The cold wind outside pushed against the glass doors of the luxury store, but inside everything was calm, warm, and polished. Smooth marble floors reflected the soft yellow lights hanging above. Every shelf was perfectly arranged, expensive. Handbags, delicate scarves, and shining jewelry sat waiting for wealthy customers who came to shop without looking at the price tags. Soft music floated through the air, adding to the feeling of quiet richness. Near the entrance, a woman hesitated before stepping inside. Her coat was old and thin, clearly worn many winters. Her shoes were scuffed, and her hands, though clean, were rough and tired. Her hair was gray and slightly messy, blowing gently from the wind she had just walked through. She held herself with care, moving gently as if afraid she might break something just by standing there. This woman's name was Maria. She did not look like the usual customers who visited this store. She did not wear designer clothes or carry a fancy purse. She did not wear expensive makeup or jewelry. Instead, she looked like someone who had lived a hard life, who had worked many years, who carried quiet stories in her eyes. Yet even with her simple clothes, she moved with dignity, a kindness in her face, and a gentle grace in her steps. As soon as Maria entered, the store manager, Mark, noticed her. He was standing behind the counter, fixing his tie, watching the door like a hawk. Mark took pride in keeping the store's image perfect. To him, image was everything. The store must look exclusive, expensive, special. He judged every customer in seconds, what they wore, how they walked, who they seemed to be. His sharp eyes narrowed when he saw Maria. She was out of place in this world of wealth and sparkle, he thought. She must have wandered in by mistake. He quickly whispered to one of the younger assistants near him, "Watch her closely. She doesn't belong here." The assistant, a kind-hearted young woman, frowned slightly but nodded quietly. She watched Maria carefully, feeling unsure. Maria did not look like trouble. She simply looked tired and gentle, almost sad. Maria slowly walked toward a table where a beautiful silk scarf lay folded neatly. She reached out her hand and touched the scarf gently, her fingers brushing the smooth fabric with care. For a moment, her face softened, her lips curled into a small smile, and her eyes glistened as if remembering something from long ago. It was as if the scarf reminded her of something beautiful, a memory, a feeling, or a promise. Then she turned slightly, holding the scarf carefully in her hands, and approached the assistant. "Excuse me," she said softly, her voice full of warmth but also hesitation. "Could you tell me the price of this scarf, please?" Before the assistant could answer, Mark stepped forward quickly. His steps were fast and loud, and his face wore a tight, fake smile that did not reach his eyes. He spoke before Maria could even finish her question. "Ma'am," Mark said sharply, loud enough for other customers nearby to hear, "are you sure you're in the right place? This is a luxury store. Everything here is quite expensive." His tone was polite on the surface, but underneath was a cold, sharp edge that cut deep. Maria's smile faded. She lowered the scarf gently onto the table and looked at Mark, her kind eyes meeting his cold ones. "Yes," she said softly. "I was just looking. My son recommended this store. He thought I would enjoy seeing it. He said I might like something here." Mark raised an eyebrow, crossing his arms, leaning forward slightly. "Really?" he said, his voice full of disbelief. "And does your son shop here often?" His words were coated in sarcasm, and a few nearby customers smiled unkindly, watching the scene like it was entertainment. Maria single quotes as face remained calm, though her fingers trembled slightly. "He told me I should visit," she said quietly. "He said this store had beautiful things." Mark laughed softly but cruelly. "Well, I am sure your son meant well, but this is not a place for browsing unless you intend to purchase something. We are very busy today." The assistant looked down, clearly uncomfortable. She wanted to speak but said nothing. She felt trapped between kindness and following the manager's lead. Maria nodded slowly, a gentle sadness in her eyes, and whispered, "I understand, thank you." She turned, her head held high, and began walking toward the door. Every step felt heavy, her heart aching from the humiliation she felt, but did not show as she left. The assistant whispered to Mark, "Sir, maybe that was a little harsh." Mark shrugged proudly. "Trust me, she wasn't going to buy anything. Better to keep the store clear for real customers." But what Mark did not know, what no one in the store knew, was who Maria really was. Outside, Maria stepped into the cold wind again. She took out her small old phone from her pocket and held it tightly for a moment. Then, with a shaky finger, she pressed a number she knew by heart. The phone rang once, then twice. "Hello?" A warm, deep voice answered on the other end. Gentle and familiar. Maria took a deep breath. "Hi, sweetheart," she said softly. "I stopped by that store you told me about." There was a pause on the other end. "Did you like it, Mom?" The voice asked kindly. Maria hesitated, her eyes filling with tears she quickly wiped away. "It wasn't what I expected," she admitted, her voice soft but sad. "The manager, he made me feel—" She could not finish the sentence, but she did not have to. The man on the other end of the call was Keanu Reeves, the famous actor. Beloved by millions not just for his movies, but for his kindness, humility, and quiet grace. Keanu single quotes his voice softened even more. "Mom, come over, please, right now." Maria smiled gently through her tears. "Okay, I'll see you soon." Inside the store, Mark continued to stand proudly behind the counter, completely unaware of what was about to happen. He did not know that the woman he had just insulted was the mother of one of the most famous men in the world. But soon, everything would change, because later that day, Keanu Reeves himself would walk through those doors, and what he would do next would leave everyone stunned. An hour had passed since Maria left the luxury store. Inside, everything had returned to its polished calm. Soft music played, expensive perfumes floated through the air, and Mark walked the floor with pride, checking the displays and greeting wealthy customers with a wide but empty smile. He felt proud of himself for keeping the store's image clean. He believed he had done the right thing by sending Maria away quickly. In his mind, she did not belong in a place like this, but outside, something very different was happening. Keanu Reeves sat quietly in his car, listening carefully as his mother told him everything. She had never complained much, not even when life was hard, but today her voice had cracked when she spoke of the way she had been treated, the coldness, the judgment, the humiliation. Keanu listened in silence, his heart heavy. His mother had been the one constant light in his life. When he was growing up, money was tight, times were difficult, but Maria had always taught him to treat everyone with kindness. She taught him that true respect came not from fame or fortune, but from how you cared for others, no matter their position. He owed everything to her, and now, someone had made her feel small, simply because she had walked into a store wearing old clothes. Keanu knew he could not let this go. But he also knew he did not need to raise his voice or cause a scene. He believed that sometimes the quietest storms made the deepest impact. He stepped out of the car and walked slowly toward the store. Inside, the assistant who had watched the earlier scene was tidying a display when she glanced toward the entrance and froze. Her breath caught in her throat. For a moment, she could not believe what she was seeing. Keanu Reeves had just stepped inside. He was dressed simply dark jeans, a plain black shirt, no expensive jewelry, no sunglasses, no entourage. Yet his presence filled the room instantly. It was as if the entire store had fallen into complete silence. Even the soft background music seemed to fade as every customer turned to look. Mark noticed too. He quickly straightened his tie, fixing his suit jacket and rushing toward the entrance with a big smile on his face. "Good afternoon, sir," Mark said, his tone dripping with sudden respect. "Welcome. What an honor to have you here. May I assist you personally?" Keanu stopped just inside the door and looked slowly around the store. His gaze was calm, thoughtful. But behind his gentle eyes was a quiet storm, waiting. He looked directly at Mark and asked softly, "Are you the manager?" Mark puffed up with pride. "Yes, sir, I manage the store. I'd be happy to show you our most exclusive collections. Please, anything you wish to see, just say the word." Keanu did not smile. His voice stayed soft but carried weight as he spoke the next sentence. "About an hour ago, my mother came here." Those words dropped like a stone into a still pond. Everyone nearby froze. Mark blinked, clearly confused but still smiling nervously. "Your mother," he repeated. Keanu nodded slowly. "An older woman. Gray hair. Wearing a simple coat. She told me she stopped by. And she told me how she was treated." Mark's smile faltered. Sweat began to form at his temple. He suddenly understood. He tried to recover quickly. Oh, I see, sir. I apologize. If there was any misunderstanding, we have many visitors. We try to keep a certain standard." Keanu tilted his head slightly. "A standard?" he asked softly, repeating the word as if tasting it carefully. "Yes. We must protect the image of the store," Mark stammered. "Some visitors, well, not all of them. I mean, some don't really plan to buy anything." Keanu took a step forward, closing the distance between them. His voice remained calm, quiet, almost gentle. But every word he spoke carried weight. "So you judged my mother just by looking at her. You didn't ask her name. You didn't listen to her voice. You didn't know her story. You just decided she did not belong here." Mark opened his mouth to explain, but no words came out. The assistant who had watched everything earlier felt tears welling up in her eyes. She remembered the sadness on Maria's face when she had walked out of the store. Now hearing Keanu's soft but strong words, she felt even more ashamed of not speaking up. Keanu looked around the store slowly. Customers watched in complete silence. No one dared interrupt. They all felt something important was happening. Something deeper than a celebrity visit. Keanu continued. "My mother is one of the kindest people you could ever meet. She taught me everything I know about respect, about treating people with dignity, about kindness. And today, she walked into the store because I suggested she might like it. Instead, you made her feel small, less than human, unworthy." His voice never rose, but every word cut through the silence like a knife. Then he turned to the assistant and smiled, gently, the first true smile since he entered. "You tried to show her kindness, didn't you?" he asked. The assistant nodded quickly, tears now falling freely down her cheeks. "I wanted to, but I'm sorry, I didn't say anything." Keanu nodded. "You did more than most. Thank you." He reached into his back pocket and pulled out a card. "I own a company," he said gently. "If you ever feel you want to work somewhere that values kindness first, call this number." The assistant took the card, her hands shaking. Keanu turned back to Mark. "You don't need to worry about me shopping here," he said quietly. "I won't be buying anything today. And neither will my friends. But I hope you remember this moment, not because I am famous, but because today you were shown exactly what kind of man you have become." Mark stood frozen, pale and silent. Keanu took a slow, deep breath and stepped back toward the door. The entire store watched as he left, no shouting, no anger, just a deep, silent grace that carried more power than any loud scene. Outside, Maria was waiting on the sidewalk. She smiled when she saw her son approaching. Without a word, Keanu wrapped his arms around her in a warm hug. "Are you okay, Mom?" he asked gently. Maria nodded, leaning into his embrace. "I am now," she whispered. They walked away together. Hand in hand, two people who knew that kindness, respect, and humility mattered more than wealth or image. Inside the store, the silence remained heavy. The lesson was clear. Everyone watching had just seen what true respect looked like. And it had nothing to do with expensive clothes or polished floors. The hours after Keanu Reeves left the luxury store felt different. Though the shelves still glimmered and the soft music continued playing, the air inside felt heavy. The assistant who had quietly watched the entire moment replayed every word in her mind. She could still hear the quiet strength in Keanu's voice, still see the shame on Mark's face as the truth sank in. But it wasn't just the employees who noticed. The other customers, the ones who had turned their heads to watch Maria being dismissed earlier, were now whispering quietly among themselves. A few wealthy shoppers who had come in thinking of making large purchases quietly left, their eyes cold as they passed Mark, their thoughts clear even without words. They didn't want to give their money to a place that lacked heart. Mark felt it too. Every time a customer left without buying, a small knot formed in his stomach. He straightened his tie again and again, walking around the store as if busy, but inside he felt the pressure building. He knew that his actions had been watched, judged, and now they were spreading beyond this store. Because outside word was moving faster than he could have imagined. One shopper who had witnessed the scene earlier had quietly taken out her phone and recorded part of what happened. The video was short, just a few seconds of Keanu standing quietly, speaking softly about respect and kindness, but it was enough. By evening, the video had been shared thousands of times online. The comments were filled with people praising Keanu's grace and calling out the behavior of the manager. Maria, meanwhile, sat quietly in her son's home. It was a simple house, warm and comfortable, not overly grand but peaceful and full of books and music. Keanu made her tea and sat beside her, holding her hand. He didn't speak much. He didn't need to. His presence was enough. His silent way of caring spoke louder than words. "You didn't have to do that today," Maria whispered after a while, her fingers tracing the edge of the teacup. Keanu smiled gently. "Mom, I had to, not because of who I am, but because of who you are." Maria looked into his eyes. Her son, the boy who had grown up with so little, who had faced hardships she could never protect him from, had become a man who carried kindness like a quiet armor. Fame had never changed his heart. "I only went there today because you told me about that store," she said softly. "You wanted me to enjoy something nice." Keanu nodded. "I did. But their kindness is what should have made it nice, not the expensive things they sell." Outside the store, things were changing quickly. The video had reached more people than anyone expected. Even news outlets began to share it, praising Keanu's quiet way of standing up for his mother. Articles appeared with headlines about respect and humility, with readers sharing their own stories about kindness and the importance of treating everyone with dignity, no matter what they wore or how they looked. Back at the store, Mark's phone began to ring nonstop. First it was his district manager, then the regional director. They had all seen the video. They all wanted answers. Mark paced behind the counter, his face pale now, his fingers shaking slightly as he spoke on the phone, trying to explain himself. But the more he tried to excuse his behavior, the more he realized the truth. There was no excuse. What he had done had not been just a mistake. It was a failure of character, and now the entire world was watching. Even the assistant, who had felt powerless before, felt a shift inside her. She realized something that day. Kindness was powerful. Far more powerful than Mark's pride or control. She felt ashamed for not speaking up earlier, but at the same time, she felt hopeful now. Maybe, from this day forward, things could be different, not just for her, but for how everyone in the store would treat others. The next morning, the store's front door stayed locked. A sign was placed outside that read, "Closed for staff." Meeting inside. The staff gathered. The regional director himself had arrived early, his face serious. He addressed the employees quietly but firmly. "This store lost something important yesterday," he said simply. "Not just a few sales, not just good publicity. We lost trust. And we lost it because of how one of us treated a woman who deserved respect." He turned to Mark, who sat silently in a corner, his face pale, unable to meet anyone's eyes. "This is not about who her son is," the director continued. "This is about who she is, and it's about who we are, too." The assistant felt a wave of relief when she heard those words. It felt like honesty finally, like something good might come from the hurt that had been caused. Meanwhile, Maria remained quiet at home. She never told anyone about what had happened after she left the store. She did not speak about the attention or the video going viral. She did not care for fame. She only cared that her son was kind, and that kindness mattered more than anything the world could sell. Keanu did not speak publicly about the incident either. He didn't need to. His actions had already spoken louder than any interview or press statement ever could, and the luxury store would never be quite the same again, because soon something unexpected would happen. And this time, it would not be Keanu who walked through those doors. It would be Maria. But this time, she would not be alone. 2 weeks had passed since the day Maria was quietly turned away from the luxury store. And since Keanu Reeves walked in, saying almost nothing but changing everything. The store itself had changed too. Though the marble floors still shined, and the glass shelves sparkled, there was a different energy now. After the viral video spread online, fewer customers came. Some regular clients stopped visiting altogether. The store's need was no longer defined by its expensive goods, but by that one moment of disrespect that the world had seen. Mark, the once proud manager, now walked the floor with a heavy step. Every time he saw a new customer walk in, he wondered if they had seen the video too. The assistant who had once felt powerless now moved with quiet confidence. She had learned something important that day, that kindness had its own strength. Outside, spring had begun. Soft sunshine warmed the streets, and trees were starting to bloom. Birdsong mixed with the distant noise of traffic. Life moved on, as it always did, but inside Maria's heart, something had changed too. Maria had spent these days quietly at home, thinking deeply. She never wanted attention. She did not enjoy being the reason for gossip or fame. But there was a part of her that felt unfinished, as if her story with the store was not over. She did not want revenge. She did not wish harm to anyone. She only wanted to return, not as Keanu Reeves' mother, but as herself. She wanted to prove that dignity did not depend on expensive clothes or jewelry, that every person deserved respect simply for being human. And this time, she would not walk in alone. On a warm afternoon, Maria dressed carefully. She wore the same coat and shoes as before, but this time she smiled as she looked at herself in the mirror. She felt peaceful inside. Outside, a car waited, but not just any car. It was not a limousine or a flashy sports car. It was a simple, black car, clean and modest. Inside the car, sitting quietly, were 3 women, Maria's old friends. Women who, like her, had lived simple, hard-working lives. They laughed together gently as Maria joined them. Their friendship stretched back decades, full of shared joys and sorrows. "Are you sure you want to do this, Maria?" one of them asked gently. Maria nodded, her smile calm and kind. "I don't want anything from them," she said softly. "I just want them to see us, really see us." Together, the 4 women stepped out of the car and walked toward the store. Inside, Mark noticed them immediately. 4 older women, wearing simple clothes, no expensive handbags, no jewelry. He felt panic rise inside him. His mind raced. Were they here because of the video? Were they here to embarrass him again? His pride and fear mixed in his chest like heavy stones. the assistant noticed too. But unlike Mark, she felt something different, a sense of warmth and respect. She remembered Maria's kind face. She remembered how wrong it had felt that day, and she quietly stepped forward before Mark could say anything. "Welcome back," she said gently, her voice soft and sincere. Maria's eyes sparkled. "Thank you," she replied kindly. "We just wanted to look around. That's all," the assistant nodded. "Please, take your time." Mark watched from behind, unsure what to do. He wanted to stop them, but he couldn't. Something about the way Maria stood there, peaceful and graceful, made it impossible. The four women moved slowly through the store, looking at scarves, touching the soft fabrics, smiling together. They laughed gently as they admired the items, not because they planned to buy, but because they enjoyed the moment. And something extraordinary began to happen. Other customers, who had come in, stopped and watched. But this time, there was no judgment in their eyes. Some smiled gently. Some even walked over to say hello. The atmosphere inside the store softened. It felt warmer, more human. The assistant quietly walked over to Mark and spoke in a voice just above a whisper. "Sir, this is what kindness looks like," she said gently. "This is what our store should feel like." Mark said nothing. His pride was heavy, but deep inside he knew she was right. Maria and her friends continued their quiet visit, admiring the beauty around them. They didn't rush and they didn't shrink under the stares. They simply existed, graceful, kind, and full of quiet dignity. When they had finished, Maria turned back to the assistant. "Thank you for your kindness today," she said softly. Assistant felt tears rise in her eyes. She nodded quickly, unable to speak. As Maria and her friends walked out, the entire store felt transformed, not because of any expensive sale, but because kindness had finally returned to its heart. Outside, Maria breathed in the warm spring air. Her friends laughed gently beside her. She felt free. She had walked back into the very place that once humiliated her. But this time, she walked out as herself, unbroken, proud, and surrounded by true friendship. And inside the store, a quiet shift had begun. But what no one knew yet was that Maria's return was only the beginning, because something unexpected was still coming, something that would change everything for Mark forever. The days after Maria's peaceful return to the store passed quietly, but something inside Mark remained unsettled. He tried to act as if nothing had changed. He still walked the store with his clipboard, checking the displays, adjusting small details, pretending he was in control. But deep inside, he felt a strange discomfort, as if the walls of the store he had built with pride were no longer as solid as before. The assistant noticed it too. She saw how Mark hesitated now when speaking to customers who didn't look wealthy. She saw how he avoided eye contact when older women entered. There was a weakness in his confidence, a shadow following his every step. He was no longer sure who belonged and who didn't. The truth was, he had lost the power to judge, and that loss unsettled him. But outside the polished walls of the store, a new story was beginning. In the quiet corner of the city, a small theater was preparing for an event. It wasn't an ordinary event. It was a private evening hosted by Keanu Reeves himself. No media, no red carpet, no flashing cameras. Just a quiet invitation sent personally to people who had mattered in his life, and to a few strangers who needed to hear an important message. Keanu had planned this evening carefully. He wanted to use this moment not to promote a film, but to honor his mother, and to send a gentle but powerful reminder about dignity and kindness. And among the small list of guests was Mark. The invitation had arrived at the store in a simple envelope. There was no golden lettering, no grand announcement. Inside was a short note, written in Keanu's own handwriting. "Dear Mark, sometimes we are given a chance to see ourselves clearly. I invite you to join me this Friday evening at the Old City Theater for a private gathering. I hope you will Come, Keanu. When Mark first read the note, his heart raced. He wasn't sure whether it was a trap, a test, or something else entirely. Part of him wanted to ignore it. Part of him felt too ashamed to go. But another part, a small but growing part, felt curious. Maybe even hopeful. On Friday evening, just as the sun was setting, Mark found himself walking toward the old theater. He wore his best suit, but it did not make him feel strong tonight. He felt exposed, uncertain, vulnerable in a way he hadn't felt in years. When he entered the theater, he was surprised by its simplicity. There was no grand stage, just a small platform with a single chair and a microphone. The seats were mostly filled with ordinary people, some elderly women, some young artists, a few store clerks from other shops nearby. It was a humble, intimate crowd. Mark sat quietly at the back, unsure why he was here. Then, as the lights dimmed, Keanu walked gently onto the stage. He did not arrive with applause. He did not expect any. He simply sat in the chair, smiled warmly at the audience, and began to speak. His voice was soft, but every word carried weight. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he began. "This evening is not about me. It's about my mother, and about all the people like her who go unseen in this busy world." He paused, looking around the room slowly. "2 weeks ago," he continued, "my mother walked into a store. She walked in quietly, with kindness and dignity, as she always has, but she was treated as if she didn't belong. Simply because of how she looked. Many people saw the video, and many spoke about how wrong it was. But tonight, I want to speak about something deeper." His voice softened even more. "The truth is, we all judge, don't we? We all make quick decisions about who belongs, who matters, who deserves our time and respect. But that is not the world I want to live in. I want to live in a world where we look deeper, where we pause, where we remember that every person carries a story, a struggle, a hope." The room was silent. Every listener was leaning forward, caught in his words. Keanu then smiled gently and gestured to the side of the stage. "Tonight, I invited someone here," he said. "Someone who had the courage to return to the very place where she was made to feel small, and who did so with grace and peace. Maria stepped quietly onto the stage. The audience did not cheer wildly. Instead, they gave a warm, gentle applause, the kind that carries respect rather than noise. Maria did not speak much. She simply nodded, smiled warmly, and sat beside her son. Keanu looked at her with love, and then turned his gaze to the back of the theater, directly at Mark. Mark felt a sudden wave of emotion rise in his chest. But what Keanu did next stunned everyone. He rose from his chair, walked calmly to Mark, and offered his hand. There was no anger in his eyes, no coldness, only kindness, and an invitation. "Thank you for coming," he said gently. Mark's single quotes S throat tightened. He could barely speak. All he could do was nod, tears forming in his eyes. In that quiet gesture, something broke inside Mark. Not in a painful way, but in a freeing way. For the first time, he saw himself clearly. Not as a proud manager, not as a man guarding an image, but as a human being who had made a mistake and was being offered a chance to do better. After the event, Mark waited quietly outside the theater. As Keanu and Maria walked past him, he spoke softly for the first time. "Mrs. Reeves, I'm sorry," he whispered. Maria smiled gently, placing a hand on his arm. "I know," she said kindly. "And that's enough." Mark watched them walk away together, mother and son, humble, kind, full of quiet dignity. Inside his heart, something had changed forever, but life still had one final surprise for him, because soon Maria would return to his store. But this time, she would change his life in a way he never expected. The quiet morning light washed over the city streets as Maria walked slowly down the familiar road. Her steps were steady, her simple coat wrapped gently around her shoulders, her face calm and peaceful. But this time, she was not carrying sadness or hesitation. This time, she walked with purpose. As she approached the luxury store, she paused outside for a moment, looking through the tall glass windows. Inside, the lights were soft, the shelves neatly arranged, and the familiar smell of polished wood and expensive perfume filled the air. But something felt different now, not just inside the store, but inside herself. Maria opened the door and stepped inside. Her entrance was quiet, but immediately noticed. A hush seemed to fall over the employees as they recognized her. Not because she was famous, not because of wealth or status, but because of what she represented now. She was the woman whose quiet dignity had changed the entire atmosphere of this place. Mark stood behind the counter, his posture different from before. The proud, cold man who once judged her harshly was gone. In his place was a man transformed, more humble, more thoughtful, carrying the weight of reflection. He walked toward her slowly, meeting her eyes. "Mrs. Reeves," he said gently. "Welcome back." Maria smiled softly. "Thank you," she said, her voice warm and kind. There was a long pause, not awkward, but full of meaning. "I wasn't sure if you would ever return," Mark admitted quietly. "But I'm grateful that you did." Maria nodded gently. "I didn't come to buy anything," she said. "I came for something else." Mark looked puzzled for a moment. "Anything you need," he said quickly. "Please just say it." Maria smiled even more kindly. "I came to ask, how are you doing?" The question caught Mark completely by surprise. He had prepared himself for a complaint, or even a quiet rebuke, but not for this, not for such a simple human question. I'm doing better," he admitted quietly. "I've been thinking a lot. I've learned more in these last few weeks than I did in years of running this store." Maria nodded. "That's good," she said. "Sometimes it takes a difficult moment to wake up our hearts." Mark's eyes softened. He could see now why her son carried himself with so much grace. The strength that Keanu showed, that quiet, powerful kindness, had come from her. Maria did not seek revenge. She did not need praise. She was simply here, as herself. But then, Maria reached into her bag and gently pulled out a small envelope. "I have a gift," she said softly. She handed the envelope to Mark. His hands trembled slightly as he opened it. Inside was a simple card, handwritten in neat script. "Kindness is free, but its value is endless. Thank you for giving yourself a chance to change." At the bottom was her signature, Maria. Mark felt tears rise in his eyes. He clutched the card gently, as if it were fragile. "Thank you," he whispered. Maria placed a gentle hand on his arm. "This store can still be beautiful," she said softly. "But now, maybe it can be beautiful for everyone who walks through the door." Those words stayed with Mark. In that moment, he realized something powerful. Dignity was not something money could buy. Respect was not something that came from wearing a suit or managing an expensive shop. It came from how you treated others. Even when no one was watching. Maria smiled once more, then turned to leave. As she walked slowly toward the door, she paused beside the young assistant, the one who had shown her quiet kindness weeks before. "You have a good heart," Maria said gently. The assistant's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," she whispered. And with that, Maria stepped outside, back into the bright morning sunlight. She felt lighter, peaceful, free. Outside, parked quietly near the curb, was Keanu's car. He stepped out as she approached, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. "You didn't have to come today," he said softly. Maria smiled up at her son. "Yes," she replied gently, "I did. Kindness needed a proper ending." Keanu nodded, understanding completely. Together, they walked away, mother and son, bound by love and humility. Behind them, inside the store, Mark stood still, holding Maria's card tightly in his hands, and for the first time, he felt hope. Hope that he could build something better. From that day on, the luxury store slowly changed. There was no sign on the door announcing it, no new policy written in fancy letters, but everyone who visited felt it. The store had become a place where kindness lived, not because of the price tags, but because of the people inside.